We're told to chase happiness like it's a finish line, like it's something just one step away, a better job, a new relationship, a bigger house, or a few more followers. And yet, the more we chase it, the more it slips through our fingers. That's not failure, it's design. Because happiness was never meant to be hunted. It was meant to be discovered, quietly, in the wake of something deeper. The Stoics knew this. They didn't aim for happiness directly. They aimed for meaning, for virtue, for integrity, for alignment with nature and reason. And when they lived that way, peace followed, fulfillment followed. Not as a reward, but as a consequence. In this world obsessed with feeling good, we forget how to be good, how to live a life that's whole, rooted, and real. But if you're tired of the emotional roller coaster, if you're done chasing the next high only to fall back into emptiness, then maybe it's time to stop running after happiness and start cultivating meaning instead. That's what this episode is about. The shift from temporary pleasure to lasting purpose. From surface-level smiles to a deep inner peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. And once you make that shift, everything changes. Not just how you feel, but how you live. 1. Pleasure fades. Purpose endures. There's a reason the moments that feel the best often disappear the fastest. Pleasure, by its very nature, is fleeting. It's built to come and go, like waves on the surface of the ocean. You might chase it through food, through sex, through success, or praise. But the high never lasts. It peaks, then fades. And what's left after the pleasure dissolves? Often nothing. Sometimes regret, sometimes a deeper craving, but rarely peace. The Stoics saw this clearly. They warned us about chasing what they called externals, those things outside of our control that promise happiness but deliver dependency. They knew that when you anchor your contentment to pleasure, you live at the mercy of circumstances. One delay, one rejection, one misstep, and your emotional state crumbles. That's not power. That's slavery to sensation. Purpose is different. Purpose doesn't always feel good. It's not designed for comfort. It's designed for meaning. A person who lives with purpose doesn't need constant pleasure to stay afloat. They're anchored in something deeper, something that doesn't change when the weather does. They can feel tired, even frustrated, and still remain fulfilled. Why? Because they know their suffering serves something greater. Because they've chosen depth over ease. We live in a world that glorifies the quick fix, the instant thrill, the viral moment. But none of that lasts, and deep down, you know it. The joy you feel after hours of focused creation, the kind that drains you but leaves you proud, is not the same as the dopamine spike from scrolling or indulging. One leaves you feeling empty after the high fades. The other leaves you quietly proud, quietly whole. Purpose endures because it grows from within. It's not dependent on what others think or what the world gives you. It's built through action, small, consistent, often invisible. It's what makes you get up early to work on something that matters, even when no one's watching. It's what makes you treat others with kindness, even when you're tired. It's what guides you when temptation calls, because purpose has a longer memory than pleasure. But let's be honest, choosing purpose isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes it feels like sacrifice. But look closely, it's not actually sacrifice, it's investment. You're trading what feels good now for what feels right later. You're delaying the sugar rush for the strength of true satisfaction. And that's what builds character. That's what builds peace. When Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it," He was reminding us that living well isn't about talking. It's about walking the harder path when it matters, not because it's easy, but because it's right. And that choice, that conscious, repeated decision to choose meaning over momentary ease, is what separates the fulfilled from the frustrated. So next time you're offered the shortcut, the escape, the pleasure that asks nothing of you, pause. Ask yourself, will this matter tomorrow? Will this add depth to who I am, or just distract me for a little while? Because the pleasures that fade quickly are rarely worth the cost they demand in attention, time, and emotional peace. Purpose might not always bring a smile, but it brings something stronger: direction, integrity, strength, the kind that doesn't vanish at the first sign of discomfort. And if you want a life that lasts, a life that's rooted, then that's what you need to build, not a shrine to comfort, but a foundation of meaning. Because in the end, pleasure will come and go, but purpose stays. It grows with you, it carries you, and it's the only thing that will still matter, long after the thrill is gone. 2. Happiness is a byproduct of right living. We spend so much of our lives trying to feel happy that we forget to ask the more important question: am I living rightly, not perfectly, not according to someone else's metrics, but rightly, according to principles that matter, that guide, that elevate the soul? Because happiness, real happiness, isn't something you chase. It's something that happens, quietly, naturally, when your life is aligned. This is what the Stoics understood better than most. They didn't define happiness as a mood or a fleeting emotional state. They called it eudaimonia, a state of flourishing, a harmony between your actions and your values. A quiet confidence that comes not from what you've gained, but from how you live. And the moment you stop trying to feel good and start focusing on being good, that's when the emotional storms begin to settle. But let's be clear, living rightly is not always convenient. It doesn't guarantee ease. Sometimes the right thing to do is the hardest thing to do. Telling the truth when lying would protect you. Walking away when staying feels safer. Taking responsibility when blaming would feel better. These moments test you. They don't come with applause. They often don't feel good in the moment. But afterward, after the courage, after the discipline, something else arrives. Peace. A peace you can't fake. A peace you've earned. That's the secret no one tells you about happiness. It's not emotional luck. It's the result of moral momentum. You act rightly once, and you feel stronger. You act rightly again, and you begin to trust yourself. You build that trust over time, and suddenly you don't need external validation to feel whole. You know who you are. You live with integrity. And slowly, that integrity becomes your foundation. It becomes your peace. Contrast that with the life of someone who constantly sacrifices values for ease, who cuts corners, tells half-truths, seeks applause instead of alignment. They may smile often, they may look successful, but underneath, there's anxiety, there's restlessness, there's the weight of knowing they've betrayed something inside themselves. No amount of success or attention can quiet that inner dissonance. That's why the Stoic doesn't obsess over outcomes. He focuses on effort, on intention, on doing what is within his control, and doing it well. He doesn't chase the feeling of happiness. He builds the conditions that allow it to arise. Like cultivating a garden, you don't force the flower to bloom. You nurture the soil, you water, you wait, and then, in its own time, beauty appears. When you stop asking, "How can I be happy?" and start asking, "How can I live with integrity today?" you begin to see the shift. You stop measuring life in terms of excitement or highs. You start measuring it by depth, by peace, by how aligned your actions are with the kind of person you want to be. And that kind of living, the slow, steady path of virtue, it never fails to reward you. So if you're feeling lost, if happiness feels distant, don't chase it harder. Pause, reflect, ask yourself, am I living in a way that I respect? Am I honoring what I say I believe? Am I proud of how I treat others and myself when no one is watching? The answers may sting, but they are the beginning of wisdom, the beginning of change. Happiness, then, is not something to pursue. It is something to notice. When you've done the hard work of building a life rooted in values, not in moods, and once it arrives, you'll know. It didn't come because you chased it. It came because you stopped chasing everything else. 3. The pursuit of joy invites suffering. It sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. In fact, it's one of the most paradoxical truths about life. The more desperately we chase joy, the more elusive it becomes, like trying to hold water in your hands. Squeeze too tightly, and it slips through your fingers. That's the nature of joy when it's pursued directly. The moment you treat it like a destination, it begins to run from you. We've been conditioned to believe that we must always be happy, that life's purpose is to maximize pleasure and minimize discomfort. But this belief, subtle, seductive, and deeply embedded, sets us up for endless frustration. Because the pursuit of joy often becomes a rejection of reality, and when you resist reality, you suffer. Think about it. How many times have you told yourself, I'll be happy when you get the job, when you find the relationship, when you lose the weight, but then you arrive and happiness doesn't. Or it shows up for a moment and then disappears, and suddenly you're empty again. Only now with the added disappointment that the thing you thought would complete you didn't. The Stoics saw this suffering clearly. Seneca once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Craving joy, chasing it like a commodity, only highlights its absence. It creates a mental story that where you are is not enough, that you must acquire, achieve, or experience something else before you can rest. But life doesn't work like that. Joy is not something you earn through chasing. It's something that arises when you stop clinging, when you stop demanding, when you stop measuring every moment for its emotional yield, and instead engage with it fully, without resistance, without expectation. Ironically, true joy is often found not in the pursuit of joy, but in the pursuit of truth. In doing hard things well, in showing up with honesty, courage, and love, even when it's inconvenient. These actions don't always feel happy in the moment, but over time they lead to a life you don't need to escape from, a life that feels whole. And in that wholeness, joy shows up, not loud and thrilling, but steady and true. Let's take it even deeper. When you expect joy, you become entitled to it, and entitlement is one of the fastest paths to disappointment. Life doesn't owe us happiness. It owes us nothing. And when we accept that, something amazing happens. We become free. Free to engage with life on its terms, not ours. Free to feel everything, not just the good, but the difficult too, without being broken by it. The Stoic trains himself to love reality, not just the parts that feel good. He sees joy not as a goal, but as a visitor. Welcome it when it comes, but never cling to it, because when you cling, you suffer. And suffering, in this context, is born not from pain, but from resistance to what is. So here's the question. What if joy is something you notice, not something you chase? What if it grows naturally in the soil of presence, purpose, and peace? What if you stopped demanding that every moment feel amazing and started honoring moments simply for being? The pursuit of joy often hides a deeper pain, the belief that this moment isn't enough. But the moment you surrender that belief, the moment you engage with life as it is, not as you wish it were, you'll find joy was never missing. It was just buried beneath all your expectations. And in that space, in that quiet, honest, present engagement with life, suffering begins to dissolve. Not because everything is perfect, but because you stopped resisting what is and started living what matters. 4. Live virtuously, not superficially. We live in a world obsessed with appearances, a world that teaches us to look successful rather than be virtuous, to curate an image instead of build a character. It rewards style over substance, noise over depth, and visibility over integrity. But behind the filters, the smiles, the applause, many feel hollow. Why? Because what we present to the world is not who we are. It's who we want to be seen as, and the soul can feel that gap. Superficial living is easy. You follow the trends. You say what others want to hear. You do what earns approval, even if it goes against your values. You compromise when it's convenient and rationalize when you betray yourself. From the outside, it might even look impressive. But deep down, there's a quiet dissonance, a voice whispering, "This isn't you." That voice is your virtue calling you back. For the Stoics, virtue wasn't just a moral ideal, it was the only true good. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." They believed that living in harmony with reason, nature, and inner truth was the path not just to peace, but to power. Because when your life is aligned with what is right, you become unshakable. The world may test you, but it cannot take your character. And that, to the Stoic, is real freedom. But to live virtuously, you must be willing to lose the superficial rewards. You might be misunderstood. You might lose the crowd. You might walk away from opportunities that conflict with your principles. And that's the price of integrity, trading shallow gain for lasting self-respect. Virtue asks more of you than image ever will. It demands discipline when no one's watching, honesty when a lie would protect you, courage when silence would be easier, and humility when pride screams louder. But here's the paradox. Though it asks more, it gives more. Not in likes or validation, but in strength, in clarity, in the kind of peace that can't be faked. Living superficially is like eating sugar for every meal, sweet in the moment, but deeply unsatisfying. Living virtuously is like building muscle. It's slow, often uncomfortable, but transformative. And the difference is night and day. One leaves you needing more to feel good. The other leaves you standing taller, not because others see you, but because you see yourself. We don't need more people who appear successful. We need more who are deeply grounded, who walk with quiet confidence, not because they have everything figured out, but because they've chosen to live in alignment. These people don't preach. They live. They don't chase recognition. They attract respect, slowly and silently, through the consistency of their character. So ask yourself, when the world stops watching, who are you? When no one's around to praise or blame, how do you speak, act, and think? That's where your real life happens. That's where virtue either lives or dies. The Stoics weren't concerned with how they appeared to others. They were concerned with how they appeared to themselves. And they understood something most people miss. Superficiality might impress the crowd, but it will never satisfy the soul. Virtue, on the other hand, may take longer. It may cost more, but it pays in something far more valuable than applause: a clear conscience, a strong mind, and a life that feels whole. And that, in the end, is worth more than any attention the world can offer. 5. Meaning emerges through service and struggle. It's a strange truth of life. The moments that shape us the most are rarely the easiest. We grow not through constant comfort, but through meaningful discomfort, through the challenges that test us and the responsibilities that stretch us beyond our selfish instincts. And yet, so many avoid these moments. They chase ease, they pursue entertainment, they build a life designed to feel good, but they wonder why it feels empty. The answer is simple: there is no depth without weight, and the weight of meaning is carried through service and struggle. Let's start with service. We often think of purpose as something internal, something we find in solitude or reflection, and that's part of it. But purpose becomes real when it leaves you, when it extends beyond your own gain and begins to impact others. True meaning isn't self-centered, it's relational. It shows up when you decide to give your time, your energy, your care, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient, because that's when you're no longer performing goodness, you're becoming it. Seneca said, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." But kindness isn't always soft. Sometimes it's sacrifice. Sometimes it's staying present with someone in pain, even when you feel helpless. Sometimes it's choosing to lead by example, even when no one follows right away. These acts of service aren't glamorous, but they leave a mark, not just on the world, but on your soul. They teach you that your life has weight because it matters to someone else. Then there's struggle, the other half of meaning. We try so hard to avoid it, but the truth is, every meaningful thing in your life came from some form of hardship. Your strength, forged in failure. Your wisdom, sharpened by mistakes. Your compassion, born from your own wounds. Meaning doesn't come from everything going right. It comes from surviving what went wrong and choosing to grow anyway. The Stoics didn't run from hardship. They prepared for it. They welcomed it as training. Epictetus reminded us, "Difficulties show men what they are. Struggle reveals what's real and strips away what's shallow." It humbles you. It clarifies your values. It teaches you what you're capable of, not by theory, but by fire. And when service meets struggle, something extraordinary happens. Your suffering becomes fuel for contribution. Your pain becomes the foundation of empathy. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How can I use this to help others?" That shift is where meaning lives. But let's be honest, this path isn't easy. Living for more than yourself, it's exhausting at times. Facing hardship with courage, it hurts. But the reward is unmatched, not in fame or comfort, but in the quiet confidence that your life matters. Not because of what you've received, but because of what you've given and endured. So if you're in a season of struggle, or if you're feeling lost in comfort, ask yourself, where am I giving myself away? Where am I allowing challenge to shape me rather than break me? You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to keep showing up with intention, with courage, with heart. Meaning isn't found in the mirror. It's found in the lives you touch and the burdens you carry with grace. So embrace the work. Embrace the hard days. Embrace the part of you that wants to serve quietly and struggle honestly. Because that's not weakness. That's the raw material of a meaningful life. 6. Align your actions with your principles. In the quiet of our minds, most of us already know what's right. We know how we should speak, how we should treat people, what we should pursue. The challenge isn't in knowing, it's in living what we know, because there's a subtle, dangerous gap between our values and our behavior, and when that gap widens, we feel it. We lose respect for ourselves, not because we made a mistake, but because we betrayed something we believe in. The Stoics weren't interested in clever philosophies that lived only in the mind. They believed that wisdom must be embodied, that truth must be walked. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That's the difference between being merely educated and being truly wise. When you align your actions with your principles, something powerful happens. You simplify your life. You no longer need to remember which version of yourself you showed to whom. You don't wrestle with internal guilt for saying one thing and doing another. You walk into each moment knowing you are whole, and that wholeness creates clarity, energy, and peace. But alignment isn't always comfortable. Sometimes your principles will cost you. They might make you stand alone. They might mean turning down money, walking away from praise, or saying no when everyone else is saying yes. But that's the test of integrity, when doing what's right isn't easy, and you do it anyway. Living in alignment doesn't mean perfection, it means intention. It means noticing when your actions are drifting from your values, and having the courage to correct course. It means not just saying honesty matters, but telling the truth even when it's hard. Not just believing in kindness, but choosing it even when it's not returned. Not just admiring courage, but taking the uncomfortable step forward when fear whispers, "Stay small." You don't need to announce your values to the world. You need to live them consistently, quietly, and fully. Because the people who make the deepest impact aren't the loudest. They're the ones whose lives match their words. And when your life reflects your values, you become trustworthy to others, but more importantly, to yourself. The worst kind of suffering isn't external. It's internal dissonance, when you look in the mirror and see someone who compromised for comfort, who silenced their truth for approval, who abandoned their principles for convenience. That kind of pain lingers. It follows you. It erodes your confidence from the inside out. But the opposite is also true. When you align your behavior with your beliefs, even if it's hard, even if no one notices, something inside you strengthens. You begin to walk taller, you sleep better, you speak with more weight because you've earned your own respect. So ask yourself today, not what do I believe, but am I living it? Is my calendar aligned with what I claim to value? Are my words backed by behavior? Are my quiet moments filled with integrity or just image? The Stoics didn't seek applause, they sought congruence. And if you want real peace, not performative peace, then don't just study the path. Walk it. Don't just admire your principles, defend them. And don't just speak of virtue. Let it echo in your every act. Because alignment isn't just about feeling better. It's about becoming someone you're proud to be. Not just once, but again and again, in every quiet decision, in every hard moment, in every choice to honor what you know to be right. 7. Let go of the pursuit and focus on becoming. We're conditioned to chase. From the time we're children, we're handed goals like trophies: get the grade, win the award, land the job, find the relationship, earn the admiration. And so we run. We chase after happiness, after success, after the next version of ourselves that we think will finally be enough. But the more we chase, the more distant it all feels, because we've mistaken motion for progress and pursuit for transformation. The Stoics invite us to flip the question. Instead of asking, "What do I want to get?" they ask, "Who am I becoming?" Because when you obsess over outcomes, you're always living in the future, in a place that doesn't exist yet. But when you shift your focus to who you are right now and how you're showing up in this very moment, you begin to build something real. Not just wish for change, but embody it. Letting go of the pursuit doesn't mean letting go of ambition. It means letting go of obsession with results. It means you stop believing that fulfillment lies just around the next corner. You stop tying your self-worth to what you haven't achieved yet. And you start finding peace in the process of becoming, step by step, day by day. Imagine someone training for a marathon. If their only focus is crossing the finish line, they might miss the strength they're gaining in the miles along the way. They might resent the pain, hate the discipline, and overlook their progress. But if they fall in love with the process, with running itself, then each mile becomes a victory. That's the Stoic way. The goal is not the finish line. It's who you are becoming with every step. This shift isn't just philosophical, it's practical. It's the difference between asking, "Why haven't I reached success yet?" and asking, "How can I practice excellence today?" Between, "Why am I not happy yet?" and "What kind of person do I want to be, even in discomfort?" The second path is slower, but it's sustainable. It grows roots. It doesn't collapse when the outcome doesn't go your way, because you've already won something more important, your own growth. Letting go of the chase also frees you from comparison. When you're no longer measuring yourself against others' timelines, you gain clarity. You stop mimicking someone else's journey and start crafting your own. You realize that the most valuable work you'll ever do is invisible to the world. Your habits, your mindset, your choices when no one's watching. The world may still tempt you to sprint, toward image, toward approval, toward quick results. But you don't have to sprint. You can walk with purpose. You can breathe. You can become. And in that quiet transformation, happiness isn't chased. It arrives. Not in dramatic moments, but in the stillness of knowing that you're aligned, that you're growing, that you're living according to who you're meant to be. So stop chasing, start becoming, and trust that meaning, peace, and even joy will meet you, not at the end of the race, but in every moment you choose integrity over image, depth over distraction, and growth over gratification. 8. Depth over dopamine. We live in a dopamine-driven world. Scroll, click, like, swipe. Every second promises a small hit of pleasure, fleeting but addictive. The modern mind is overstimulated but undernourished. We're surrounded by noise, yet starving for meaning. It's never been easier to feel entertained and never been harder to feel fulfilled. Because what we're feeding our minds isn't food. It's sugar, sweet, instant, shallow, and slowly it numbs us to the taste of real depth. The Stoics warned us about this long before algorithms and notifications. They spoke about hedone, the pursuit of pleasure, as something that can enslave the soul. Epictetus said, "The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it." He wasn't just talking about obstacles, but about resisting the cheap highs that pull us away from real virtue. Because depth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from choosing what nourishes over what excites. From saying no to the quick reward so you can build something real inside yourself. Think about your habits. Think about how easily a 5-minute scroll becomes an hour. How a sugar craving becomes a cycle. How comfort becomes a cage. None of these things are evil in themselves, but when they become the default, we drift. We lose our attention span, our emotional resilience, our sense of wonder, because dopamine rewards reaction, not reflection. It rewards impulse, not intention. Depth, on the other hand, asks more of you. It asks for time, presence, repetition, silence. It's not glamorous. No one applauds your stillness. No one claps when you choose to read instead of scroll, to reflect instead of react, to journal instead of post. But those are the moments that build you, quietly, invisibly, permanently. You can feel it when you're living from depth. Your conversations get slower but richer. Your emotions become more stable. Your thoughts more grounded. You're not chasing stimulation. You're curating wisdom. You're not pulled by the current. You're walking with direction. That's not accidental. That's built. But let's be honest. Dopamine is easier. It's seductive. And you will be tempted daily to abandon the slow, meaningful path for the fast, forgettable one. That's where discipline comes in. Not to punish you, but to free you. Discipline is choosing depth when distraction is screaming. It's closing the tab, putting down the phone, staying with the task, saying no, not because you're rigid, but because you remember who you're becoming. And that identity, who you are becoming, isn't shaped in the big moments. It's shaped in the small ones. Every time you delay gratification, every time you engage with something difficult, every time you sit with your own thoughts instead of escaping them, that's depth. And depth is what creates peace, confidence, clarity. So ask yourself today, are you living for hits of pleasure or for habits that build meaning? Are you chasing dopamine or choosing depth? One path will always be easier, the other will always be worth it. The Stoics weren't just teaching ancient philosophy, they were teaching how to be human in a world full of noise. And their invitation still stands: silence the rush. Slow down, choose what will outlast the high. Choose what makes you whole, not just what makes you feel good for a second. Depth doesn't spike, it stays. It grows roots in your character, and once you've tasted that kind of strength, you'll stop trading it for anything that comes cheap. 9. The Stoic seeks fulfillment, not feelings. In a culture obsessed with how everything feels, how happy you are, how excited, how validated, the Stoic takes a different route. He doesn't reject feelings, but he doesn't bow to them either, because he understands a hard truth that many avoid. Feelings are fleeting. They change with the weather, with sleep, with blood sugar, with the opinions of strangers. But fulfillment, real, lasting fulfillment, is something else entirely. It's not reactive, it's earned, it's cultivated, and it doesn't depend on how you feel in the moment, but on what you build over time. Modern life sells the illusion that emotional highs are the goal. Chase the buzz, chase the applause, chase the next experience that will finally make you feel alive. But what happens the day after? The crash, the emptiness, the longing for the next fix. It's the treadmill of feelings, and the Stoic steps off that treadmill, not because he's indifferent, but because he's aiming for something deeper. Fulfillment comes not from chasing emotions, but from living in alignment with your values, from knowing deep in your bones that your actions are rooted in something solid, that you are not tossed by every mood or comment or change in fortune. This is why Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, if you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. The Stoic trains his judgment, not to suppress emotion, but to see beyond it. There's a big difference between feeling good and being good, between momentary pleasure and sustained purpose. Feelings will tell you to sleep in when discipline says, get up. Feelings will tell you to lash out when wisdom says, stay silent. Feelings will tell you to quit when perseverance whispers, keep going. The Stoic listens, but he doesn't obey. He weighs emotion, but he doesn't worship it. This doesn't make the Stoic cold. Quite the opposite. It makes him clear. He feels deeply, but he chooses consciously. He loves, but not blindly. He grieves, but without losing his ground. He celebrates, but without losing himself in the high. Because for the Stoic, the question is not, how do I feel right now? But, am I living well right now? And those two are not always the same. You see this distinction in every person who chooses integrity over instant reward. In the parent who works tirelessly not for praise, but for the unseen impact. In the leader who tells the truth, even when it costs them popularity. In the friend who shows up, not because it's convenient, but because it's right. These are not emotional decisions. They're decisions rooted in character. And character is what fulfillment grows from. Ask yourself, are you organizing your life around how things feel or around what they mean? Are you waiting to feel like doing the hard thing, or doing it because it builds the kind of person you want to be? Because fulfillment isn't passive. It's not handed to you. It's not something you stumble into. It's what you become through daily, quiet, repeated action, through choosing your values when your feelings would rather run. The Stoic doesn't chase emotional highs. He cultivates internal stability. He understands that fulfillment is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. And in that mastery lies peace. Not peace that depends on circumstances, but peace that survives them. So if you feel off today, don't panic, don't spiral. Return to your values, anchor in your actions, and remember, feelings are visitors. Fulfillment is home. Build your life there. 10. Make peace your compass. In a world that glorifies speed, status, and endless achievement, peace can seem like a luxury, something you get to enjoy after you've conquered everything else. But the Stoic sees peace not as a prize, but as a principle. Not something you arrive at in the end, but something you must carry with you from the beginning. Because without peace as your compass, even your greatest victories will leave you restless. And without inner stillness, success becomes noise. Peace is not the absence of pressure, it's the presence of alignment. It's when your actions match your values, when your decisions come from clarity, not impulse, when your heart doesn't wage war with your mind. You may still face storms, but they don't enter you. That's what Epictetus meant when he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Because true freedom isn't in doing what you want, it's in being undisturbed by what you can't control. To live with peace as your compass means you start asking different questions, not, how do I win this argument, but, will this protect my peace? Not, how do I prove my worth? But, can I rest in who I already am? Not, how do I chase more? But, what can I release that no longer serves me? The more you practice this, the more you'll notice how much of modern life is designed to hijack your peace. The endless comparisons, the fear-based marketing, the pressure to be everything, everywhere, all at once. But the Stoic doesn't let the world set his emotional tone. He chooses peace, even when it costs popularity, even when it means letting go of outcomes, even when silence feels harder than speaking. Making peace your compass doesn't mean you become passive. It means your strength becomes quiet. It means you say no, not out of fear, but out of grounded self-respect. You walk away, not to avoid the fight, but because you've already won the inner one. And when someone tries to disturb you, provoke you, pull you into their chaos, you simply don't attend the invitation, because you have bigger battles, the ones within. This is why the Stoic trains his thoughts, disciplines his reactions, watches his words. Not because he fears emotion, but because he honors his own energy. He understands that protecting peace is protecting power. When you're at peace, you make better choices. You listen better. You create more. You sleep deeper. You love without clinging and lead without shouting. You become a force, not by dominating, but by not being shaken. So the next time life confronts you with noise, pause, ask, what would protect my peace in this moment? Maybe it's walking away. Maybe it's taking a breath before replying. Maybe it's refusing to carry what isn't yours. Whatever the choice, let peace, not pride, guide it. Because in the end, peace is more than just a feeling. It's your true north. It's the state from which your best self operates. And when the world is loud, unpredictable, and often cruel, your peace becomes not just a refuge, but your most powerful response. Live like that. Let peace guide your words, your habits, your direction. Make it your measure of success, not applause, not wealth, not attention. Peace. Because if you can stay still inside the storm, you haven't lost. You've mastered life. In the quiet between our desires and our distractions, there's a space where you are no longer chasing, no longer pleasing, no longer trying to prove anything, just present, just alive, just here. That space is where Stoicism points us. It doesn't promise perfection. It doesn't offer a shortcut to eternal happiness. What it offers is something deeper, a way of being that honors who you are becoming, not just what you are feeling. Throughout this journey, we've seen how meaning isn't found in the pursuit of pleasure, but in the pursuit of depth. That real strength isn't loud, it's calm. That fulfillment is not a mood you catch on a good day. It's the residue of a life lived with integrity. And when you let go of entitlement, of ego, of the obsession with image, something shifts. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop running. You begin building. You train the mind like the body. You visualize loss not to suffer, but to become grateful. You stop arguing and you start living your philosophy. You stop comparing and you measure yourself against your own quiet evolution. And when that happens, you no longer need to be convinced of your worth. You start carrying it in the way you speak, the way you walk, the way you choose peace over noise, meaning over motion, and wisdom over ego. So here's your invitation, simple but not easy. Stop chasing happiness. Cultivate meaning, not someday, not when life is perfect, but today, in how you think, in how you act, in how you show up when no one's watching. Because that's where your power lives. That's where the Stoic lives. If this message spoke to something in you, if it reminded you of who you're trying to become, don't just let it fade. Act on it, reflect on it, share it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and send this to someone who needs to be reminded. Peace isn't something you find. It's something you practice. And in that practice, you don't just change your day, you change your life.